Hello, and welcome to another episode of Seven Story Podcast. I'm Natasha Kyler, and I'm here with today's featured author, F. Wallers. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am an author, I guess. And I am also a Pilates instructor. Um, this is my debut novel that I wrote. It's geared towards middle graders and it's a time travel mystery.
And what's the name of your book?
In Solitam Drive.
In Solitude Drive. And can you tell us more about it?
So the word in Solitam, I don't want to give too much away, but you will find out what that word means if you read the book. But basically, it's just about 13-year-old Cassidy whose parents got divorced, and she moves with her mom and her brother to her mom's hometown. And Cassidy ends up meeting a new friend, Ethan. They become immediate friends, and then they start to notice that things on the street aren't adding up. And then they go on this really fun adventure, and they end up resolving the mystery on the street.
It's very fun. And how did you come up with this idea?
I had this idea in mind for a while, but I didn't fully settle on writing it. I want to say until right before COVID happened. Um, I got the idea from street signs, I guess, and even the cover of my book has a picture of a street sign. Um, but I'm afraid if I go into too much detail, then it'll just give away the whole plot. But I can say that much.
Okay. We do want to keep some level of
Yeah.
mystery. Are there any parts or characters that are specifically personal to you?
Um, I would say the main character, Cassidy. We don't have, we're not exactly the same, but we do have some similar qualities and characteristics that we share. Um, and I kind of did base part of her off of me, but part of other parts of her I took from other people in my life.
I always like to hear how authors interject themselves and people they know into their characters because sometimes it just happens without
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah. There are the family dynamic, Cassidy and her brother and her mom, it definitely sort of plays into a little bit of my family dynamic that I have. So I did kind of base part of that off of my life. And then I have there's another character, Ethan's grandfather, who I based off of one of my friends' grandfathers. So there's a little bit that I based off of in my life, but it's still very much based off of and not exactly true.
Mhm. Loosely based.
Yeah.
And what inspired you to write a book for middle graders?
Um, I I wasn't I had this idea and I wasn't fully sure if I was going to even go through with it, but I just kept on having this idea, and then eventually I just ended up wanting to create the character as a 13-year-old. And that middle grade age is just so perfect because that's when kids are really starting to open their eyes and see things about life that they never saw before. And I just love that age range, and I just feel like it's so perfect.
I agree. That is when we start to go, oh, I'm a person.
Yeah.
There are things happening. I should pay attention. What is this? I'm curious.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I really love about the story is that the two main characters, Cassidy and Ethan, they go on this adventure and they just things start to add up, but they're also so curious, and their curiosity leads them to resolving the mystery of the street.
I love that. People like to say curiosity killed the cat, but they always
Yeah.
forget that satisfaction brought it back.
Mhm.
um, Speaking of your characters, did you meticulously plan them or are they more spontaneous?
I think they were I think that the main character was, like, planned, and then the rest of them were kind of spontaneous. Um, I know that, like, usually um, as someone who I mean, it kind of just depends, cause like, I'm a pantser, like, for an author, and so I don't like to always, like, outline things and, like, plan things out, um, but I do love, like, creating characters and planning them out. So I will say that I did, like, sort of flesh out, like, how some of these characters are, like, what their personality is, what they look like, all that stuff, but I think that Cassidy, the main character, was mainly the one that was, like, at the forefront of my mind, the character that I fully had planned out, and then I just sort of drew in some of these side characters, and then it just became fully formed, like, a fully formed cast, I guess, of characters.
And you kind of started answering my other question about like the process from ideation to maybe outlining, but you said you don't really outline. So, what is your process from having the idea in your head to getting it into that book form?
Well, I tried to use, like, worksheets, character worksheets, plot worksheets, but unfortunately, my brain doesn't always work like that. Um, so I will do as much, like, character and plot worksheets as I can, but I do tend to get distracted with the actual story, and I'll just start writing it, but what I learned from writing this story is that I do need to actually sit down, plan out the whole thing. And so for the next book that I'm going to be writing, I am going to actually force myself to sit down, plan all of it out, do all the plot worksheets, character worksheets, and whatnot, because I really want it to be better than my first book.
We always love to see the growth and improvement as we continue publishing. I'm a mix. I am working on a novel, but I don't like doing like the plotting and the worksheets. And I'm like, okay, I just want to write the story, but I also have no clue where the story's going to go. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always a struggle to find that.
World building is the hardest for me because I feel like the plot is so much more important than the actual world, but at the same time, I know that for certain kinds of stories, you need to have, like, the world building extremely, like, a part of the plot because otherwise, like, certain things don't make sense. So I tried my best to do, like, a lot of world building for this story, um, and I've gotten good feedback, but, I think that if I really, like, sit down and plan out, like, this next book that I'm writing, then it'll l be a lot better than my first book.
That's very valid, and that is okay.
Yeah.
um, and what was that editing process like? Did you do everything by yourself?
I went through I wrote the story, and then I read through it, like, 2 or 3 times, and, I made changes myself, and then I asked, a few people, um, outside of, like, friends and a teacher, um, to see like, just to get their feedback to see what their thoughts were on it, and I got good feedback, and they definitely, gave me some really good input, but I didn't want it to just stop at just friends and, like, a teacher because I knew that there were more professional people out there, so I did end up getting a 2 actually, professional editors, And both of them went into so much depth on the story, the plot, the characters, the layout, all that stuff. And they gave me a lot of good feedback. And by the time I finished making all those edits, it was just a completely different story than from what it originally started with.
Yeah, that professional feedback is gonna be like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's so
Yeah,
cool." It's like, "Oh, okay, I have to start from scratch, kind
I
of."
know. Yeah, and it sucked because I had to take out so many scenes that I was so, like, obsessed with, but I knew that the editors were also right, and, it just wouldn't be the story that it is today if I had kept those scenes in.
Yeah, it's kinda heartbreaking. It's like, "Oh, I really wanted
Mhm.
the readers to
Yeah.
have this, but for the
But I
sake
still
of
have the original manuscript, so there
you
is
have
always that.
you'll always have it, and maybe you can rework it to be in another project."
Yeah, possibly.
Possibly. Um, so when you write, do you typically do pen to paper or digitally?
It's usually digitally, but sometimes if I have a pen and paper, like, right in front of me and I have an idea that I really want to jot down, then I will, um, write it down, but typically, um, I just keep everything on my laptop because that's just the easiest way for me to do it.
It's very understandable, very reasonable.
Yeah.
Um, and you said you, like, have a you're a Pilates instructor and stuff, so when do you typically find the time to write?
Um, I mean, it's hard to, like, honestly say because the last, like, 6 months has been, like, full of, like my schedule's been so full that I haven't really had much time to sit down and write. I did actually go out to coffee with a friend recently, and I finally had the chance to sit down and start, like, actually looking through this second project that I'm working on. But typically, like, I wanna say maybe in the evenings is when I have the most time to sit down and do it, but it's also just a hit or miss sort of thing because I never actually know when I'm gonna be able to sit down and work on my stuff.
Yeah, life is hectic and you work a
Yeah.
job, like, it's hard
Yeah,
finding the time.
it is.
Um, I just had a question. Oh, I wanted to ask you, like, when did you realize that you really wanted to write a book? Like, you said you had the idea and you kept coming back to the idea, so what made you go, "I'm gonna write this," really?
Yeah. Um, I mean, like, ever since I can remember, I've, like, always loved writing. Um, but, like, specifically and I've written, like, so many short stories and started so many stories, never finished them. But with this particular story, I kept on thinking about the idea, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and then finally one day, I was, like, driving down a street, and I saw these street signs, and they had these, like, really cool names on them, and I was just like, you know, I have this idea in my head and I really want to just sit down and write it because I don't think I'm going to ever be able to get out of my head. And I really just want to see this story come into something because I've never heard of anything like it before. So I just decided like that day that I was going to start writing it. And then it actually ended up becoming an actual book, which is still kind of hard for me to believe because when I first started writing it, I was intent on, like, finishing it, but I also didn't fully believe that it was gonna actually become a book. I just thought it was gonna stay as a manuscript, and then it sort of, like, started becoming real when I started looking for editors, and then I started creating the cover, and then it just, like, didn't hit me until last October when it was released that it was an actual book that I actually took 4 years to write.
Did you do something to like celebrate? Did you have a book
Yeah,
party?
I did. I had a book party with some friends, and it was so fun. I mean, it's honestly still hard for me to believe that I even had a book party. Um, but I mean, it's so cool, and I just felt so supported that day. And then I ended up getting connected to a friend who um, brought me a connection to some book events, and so I've had a few book events now, and um, I'm just super grateful for her to that. And I think I've had about, I want to say 50 people have bought my book, like both like in person and over Amazon. So, I mean, it's slow, but yeah.
50 people in a room to see you
Yeah.
would make me nervous. So celebrate all the wins.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You said that you've been writing for as long as you can remember, and you used to write like, or you do write short stories and things.
Mm.
What genres do you typically write?
I mean, I'll pretty much write anything. Like this uh book was, it's like time travel, mystery, but I mean, I'll write young adult. I mean, I'll pretty much write like anything that just like interests me. As long as like, it interests me, then I will sit down and plan it out and start writing it.
And what is your favorite thing about being a writer?
I think just the fact that there's so much creativity to it. Like I've always been a very creative person, and I love creating characters, and I love creating the world that these characters are in, and creating a plot.
And what would do you think is the most difficult thing about being a writer?
I mean, probably just getting writer's block. 'Cause, I mean, it's in those moments that I have to actually force myself to, like, not push myself to keep on writing the story, which is just so tempting because I'm a very persistent person, and when I set my mind to something, I just wanna be able to finish it. But, I mean, writer's block is definitely the most challenging because, like, I want to be able to get through with whatever I'm finishing writing, and yet I can't.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you have any techniques or anything to help get you through writer's block?
I mean, probably mainly just, like, reading books and watching TV shows and movies just to get inspiration from them, and honestly, even just, like, my interactions with, like, my friends and family, that can really help.
And I really do like that question because everybody's take on writer's block is different.
Mm,
Um, I think something I hear often is that people will just force themselves to write anything, one
mm,
page of literally anything,
yeah.
even if it's this is stupid over and over again.
I've I've tried doing that, but it's sort of like it's almost painful to do it because I know when I read it back, it's just gonna be so bad, and I'm already such, like, a major perfectionist that I know that, like, I'm just not gonna like what I write, even if I just force myself to sit down and do that.
Sorry, my dog is having a tantrum for
It's
no
okay.
reason. I think he wants to be part of the conversation. um, you mentioned that something else you do to overcome writer's block is consuming media. So I wanted to ask, like, what are
Mm.
your favorite genres to read, watch, etc.?
I mean, I'll pretty much read anything as long as it catches my interest. I do like to read like a lot of dystopian books. Um, and like as for like movies and shows, I mean, I think I like to watch like a lot of rom-coms. Um, I mean, I'll pretty much like again, I'll pretty much watch anything as long as it, catches my interest. And I know I've taken like multiple ideas from both books and movies. But yeah, I mean, like I said, just like anything that really interests me.
It's very interesting. I'm so curious to like hear like what your favorite books are.
I mean, like I know it's basic, but like the Hunger Games, the Divergent series, I guess like some of my favorite like middle grade books. There's this duo book series called The Evolution of Calpurnia Tate. It's based in the 1800s, and it just follows this 12 year old girl um and like her life, and it's super cute, such a funny story. There's this series by Wendy Mass called the Birthday Series, I think. Um, that was, like, honestly what really got me into reading when I was younger. I it was also kind of like a time travel, um, like, it had, like, themes of time travel, I think, and then, like, days repeating, sort of like Groundhog Day, the movie.
Mhm.
Um And then there's this series called The Land of Stories, which I adored that series. It's just like sort of following these two twins that go into like fairy tale world, and I really liked it. But yeah, I have honestly like way too many books. It's so hard for me to choose like one specific book.
It's amazing that you can name so many. I'm like, I don't know. I start losing all the names after I read them. I'm like,
Yeah, I know. I mean, they're also literally sitting on my shelf right over there right now, so, like,
they're
yeah.
staring at you like, mention me, mention me.
I know.
Um, what does success as a writer look like for you?
I mean, for me, it just really means, like, following through on a project, even if it's not necessarily getting, like, to the actual, like, book, even if it's just, like, a manuscript, honestly, that in its own way is successful. It would honestly be a dream for me if I could get on the New York Times bestselling list someday. But for me, I'm just honestly, like, proud that I reached the point of having, like, an actual, like, paperback copy of my book, even though, like, not that many people know about it yet, and I'm not, like, a huge author. But, I mean, yeah, just, like, honestly sitting down, like, even writing, like, a short story is honestly still impressive, and in my opinion, like, successful. Because I mean, you sat down, you had the idea, and you took the time to write it out.
Yes, I think it's very admirable and very great that you have that internal metric rather than focusing on those external metrics such as
Yeah.
social media, how many sales,
Mhm.
etc. Because it makes it easier to feel proud of yourself. Like we can get very caught up in the numbers aspect, and that takes away from how much of an accomplishment it is that you sat down and you committed to writing a book and
Yeah.
it's finished.
Yeah.
Yes, because you mentioned earlier, Diesel. You mentioned earlier how it still doesn't feel that real sometimes,
Yeah.
and it took me years to be like, oh wow, I have a
Yeah.
poetry book. So
I
I
know.
understand what you mean, but it's like still like a huge accomplishment. The other day, someone said like I think they said 3% of people that say they want to write a book actually do.
Yeah, I heard about that, and then I also heard someone else say that after, like, the first book that they wrote, it's even harder to write the second book. Like, even
Hmm,
less people are able to finish or writing a second book.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to you for your second. I have faith in
Thank you.
you. um, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to give you the floor to talk about where people can find your book. And if you want to talk more about your upcoming project, you
Okay.
have that and your socials, of course.
Okay. So you can find my book on Amazon. That's pretty much the only place that I have managed to get it on. And then I do have, and I mean, it's going to be probably in like 2 to 4 years, but I am currently working on another project. It's going to be a YA book this time. I don't know like all the details yet, but it's going to be a YA, and I'm really excited to have it like get fleshed out and all that stuff. And then you can find me on TikTok at just author F Wallers. And then you can also find me on Instagram at author F Wallers. And I think that's it.
Well, it's been great talking to you and hearing about your journey as a writer. And can you say the name of your book? I don't want to mispronounce
Yeah.
it. I know how to spell it, I just didn't
It's
pronounce it.
yeah. It's in Solitam Drive. I know it's a funky word.
Solitam Drive. Got it.
Yeah.
I'll remember now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, F. Wallers, for joining us and sharing your story. Check out their book in Solitam Drive. Until next time, I'm Natasha from 7 Story Podcast.
Thank you.